If you've no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. بنی آدم اعضای یک دیگرند که در آفرینش ز یک گوهرند. چه عضوی به درد آورد روزگار، دیگر عضوها را نماند قرار. تو که از محنت دیگران بیغمی، نشاید که نامت نهند آدمی. This beautiful poem is from Saudi. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our next speaker today. He is an Australian Hazara community representative who holds a Master of Laws, Applied Migration Law from the Victoria University. He was the joint winner of 2020 Governance Multicultural Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Hussein Raziat.
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to express our deep concern about the deterioration of anxiety, depression, and feeling of hopelessness of thousands of Afghan asylum seekers who are living in Australia in limbo, been waiting for their permanent residency for more than 10 years. Sadly, during this long period of time, they have been subject to punishment, discrimination, and exclusion. I must make it clear that the problem of temporary protection visa holders are not only their problem, rather, it is a problem for wider Australian community, in particular the wider Afghan Australian community. Recently, we have witnessed significant increase in self-harm attempts, people being died due to severe depression and mental health. Sadly, marginalization and anxiety amongst this cohort of people reached in a level that the community is deeply alarmed and concerned. During last 2 centuries, particularly after the Second World War, Australia remained as one of the most welcoming destinations for millions of refugees and asylum seekers that fled their places of habitat due to risk of persecution and torture. That's why Australia has earned a special place in the world with a compassionate approach that all Australians are proud of. Australia has a leading role in promoting and advocating for universal human rights. Australia, along with its counterparts, has been active in enforcing and upholding this universal principle where it was needed. Just recently, Australia has joined other international allies in Afghanistan, aiming to combat terrorism and bring peace and stability in Afghanistan. During 2 decades of war in Afghanistan, around 30,000 IDF personnel served in Afghanistan and 41 personnel were lost their life. They fought and worked with great courage and decency beside the Afghan soldier. We pay respect to every one of them for their dedication, services, and courage. Unfortunately, after 2 decades of long war, the international forces and former Afghan government has failed to bring peace and stability for people of Afghanistan. In fact, as a result of international forces withdrawal from Afghanistan, they made a vacant position reachable by the Taliban to enforce their barbaric domination on people of Afghanistan. Since August 2021, when Taliban took control of Afghanistan, they have marginalized and excluded all women, minority, ethnic and religious groups from society. They have silenced media and took people of Afghanistan as their hostages. Australian government has made some initial attempt to respond to the humanitarian catastrophe emerged as a result of Taliban taking control of Afghanistan, but it has totally failed to address long-standing caseload of the Afghan nationals living in Australia on temporary protection visa. In terms of size and scale of Australian response to the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, we can say Australia can do far better than what it has been publicly announced, particularly in contrast to Australian response to humanitarian crisis. Particularly in contrast to Australian response to the humanitarian crisis in Syria and Iraq, where Australia has settled around 40,000 humanitarian arrivals from Syria and Iraq, particularly the minority groups such as Yazidis and Christian during 4 years since 2015. It is great that Australia has evacuated about 4,300 people from Afghanistan, particularly those individuals and their family members who have assisted Australia during its long war in Afghanistan. But at the same time, it is very sad and unfair that the government has totally ignored thousands of Afghan TPV holders that has been continually delivering services that no other Australian does. They constantly work hard in very difficult and challenging professions and industries such as farms and orchards, construction duties and industry, meat processing factories and more, mostly around remote and regional area of Australia. It is even more unfair and discriminative that the Australian government has excluded all TPV holders to sponsor their family members under humanitarian places that the Australian government has made available to other Afghan nationals in response to the Afghanistan humanitarian crisis. Around 5,000 Afghan on temporary protection visa were unfairly ignored and disadvantaged for a decade. They have been excluded from mainstream services. As a result of such approach, their physical and mental health have been adversely affected. They have increasingly isolated from mainstream society. Even they no longer showing any interest to socialize with wider Afghan community. Numbers of suicide attempts, severe depression and anxiety, lack of interest in social participation reached in an alarming level where we as Australian Afghan community can no longer ignore and compromise. Therefore, on behalf of wider Australian Afghan community, I call upon the Australian government and the decision makers to end this unfair and cruel and discriminatory approach toward asylum seekers on TPVs. Without degrading situation of other TPV holders from other countries, there is no dispute that Afghanistan is not going to become a safe place for the Afghan asylum seekers to return within coming years or even decades. During last 20 years, Australia in conjunction with other international communities has tested this. They made all efforts to succeed in Afghanistan, but eventually they have withdrawn without any promising outcomes. At the same time, keeping these people in limbo and keep them separated from their family, their immediate family, is not a workable, fair, and human situation or solution. We can no longer close our eye and block our ears to ignore their deteriorating situation. This is because they are here. They are part of our society. They are part of our workforce. They are someone's neighbor. They are someone's employee. They are someone's friends and relatives. So let us find a solution to end this uncertainty now and let them reunite with their family members in Australia as soon as possible. Before it gets too late and before we pay more casualties and more prices. On behalf of wider Australian Afghan community, I encourage my fellow Afghans on TPV to remain resilient, strong and hopeful. We are committed to stay with you as we did today, and we will fight for your right up to the end. And let us remain hopeful that our appeal today to the Australian government, to the Australian decision makers, to hear our appeal and attend to our request. Thank you.
نو موږ هم بیا دوباره د استرالیا دولت نه خواهش کوو kindly requested Australian government regards to those refugees who are in the community from last 9 to 10 and 12 years. They're waiting for their visa. They can't even travel back their home and they can't even see their family. We are requested kindly as soon as possible and issue their visa and they could travel to see their family and their family can join them. So day by day the mental health situation are getting worse. So it's gonna be not good for our community. So I'm kindly requesting everyone. So we are here today, Australia and Canberra, from different states. People are came here to support the refugee. So I'm kindly requesting every Afghan refugee and Afghan community and Australian community to support us, to take this voice around Australia and to wake up and to get their problems. And thank you very much. If you guys got any questions?
People who are in the parliament,
Yeah.
they should focus on, and they should understand like what a bunch of people.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's gonna be not our first day or the last days.
Yeah.
If they wouldn't do anything about
We're
it,
not gonna give up.
we're gonna continue do our protest all around Australia, and we're gonna continue to the parliament.
We're gonna continue till we're getting the result.
Of course,
Yeah,
of
we
course,
never give
of
up.
course.
We never give
This
up.
is the first days, after the COVID-19.
And I'm pretty sure I can send this message to the Parliament House. Don't think like this is the last day. Nah.
Of course,
it won't
of
be
course.
happen. We are still going till we're getting the result.
We will.
Like 30,000 Afghans without visa,
Yeah.
they should get their visa.
That's
They
right.
don't have any reason to tell us like, no, you guys not able to get a visa. No way. I just live in this country more than 12 years. I'll pay tax. I'll look after you. I'll look after the local people. This community, Afghan community, showed themselves like, who are we? We have done such a great job since we came from Afghanistan, since we came from that country. You guys see any criminals here? You guys see anyone to with the Centrelink? We pay each person more than $15,000 tax per year. So what is the main reason? They should tell us why we're not able to get the visa, why we're not able to
Just the
Australian citizen.
politics. They do
Yeah.
politics, on the refugee. That's all the politics.
So what is